It's Ashley from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. Now, as we know in the YouTube world, your channel cannot survive without viewership and subscribers. So this video brings me a lot of joy because I was finally able to kind of give back to you guys. Now, long story short of how this whole situation came to be is because if you guys watched that video where we made the 2 carnival cakes, Rachel and I both gave our cakes away to local people. Unfortunately, my cake was left out a little bit too long out of the refrigerator, and since it was made with Italian meringue buttercream, I didn't feel right just giving that away in case anything had gone wrong with it. So instead, I offered to make her a cake for an upcoming event, and she incidentally needed one for her daughter. Now, she was expecting just a 6-inch cake, really just for her family. However, you guys know me, I like to go over the top. I like to kick things up a notch, so I decided to make a 2-tiered cake. Now, there weren't any stipulations given, pretty much just pink or purple, something sparkly, fun, and apparently her daughter really loves princesses. So I decided to go for this princess cake. Now for the tutorial portion of this, if you guys want to see how I crumb coat my cakes, you can check out that video in the right hand corner. After I crumb coated this with Italian meringue buttercream, I did put it in the refrigerator overnight. It's not imperative that you leave your cakes in the fridge overnight before you cover it with fondant, but it is imperative to have a really nice solid outer layer. I find it's just way easier, and if you're using American buttercream, you are going to want to put a little bit of shortening on there, but if you're using Italian meringue buttercream or Swiss meringue buttercream, you won't need to apply anything at all because the heat of your hand as you're placing all of that fondant on kind of makes it a little bit sticky again. And then I'm taking a fondant smoother and I'm just smoothing everything out. Now this is a 4-inch and it's fairly tall, and I've actually discovered that most of my cakes now are pretty much this tall. I used to call this an extra tall, but things are just getting taller and taller, and I really like it this way. If you ever find that you're getting elephant skin or things are sticking too much, use a little bit of shortening when you're kneading your fondant together and then put cornstarch down so that it doesn't stick to the surface. Now I'm using an impression mat just to get these in, and you really just can't use the impression mat by itself and rely on that. You do need to indent it a little further. So you can use a rolling tool like this, or later on I switch it up and I use my bench scraper just because I can get really straight lines this way. The other way with the rolling tool, you do run the risk of accidentally running outside of the lines. And I did go for a really small diamond pattern here because this cake is only a 4-inch. I found that it went better with the smaller diamond pattern, but you could honestly use the larger one as well, whatever you want. And now I'm just taking this tool and creating kind of these T marks all along, and I'm going to skip every second row when I do this. I just find it looks a little bit more royal and regal when you do that, but a lot of times I do skip this as well, and I'll just stick the pearls directly in. Now, I highly suggest that when you're sticking in pearls that you steam your cake, and that's just a regular clothing steamer. What the steamer does is it gets rid of any excess cornstarch and it makes the surface sticky temporarily. Don't worry, it will clear up and it'll just be smooth and matte afterwards. If you do want your cakes shiny and to stay shiny, it's a little bit of a different process. Now what I'm doing is I'm covering the bottom tier, and I'm really not being too picky with this at all. Here's the thing, whenever I'm working with cakes, I'm always looking for efficiency. So if I don't need to make something super perfect looking, I'm not going to spend that time to do so if I'm going to cover it up. So if I get a little nick here and there, I don't mind. However, I will focus on making sure the shape of the overall fondant is correct, because putting anything on it with the incorrect shape underneath is really just going to cause your cake not to look like how you want it to. So what I'm doing here is I'm doing something called, or what I like to call, Ruffled Roses. So you're basically taking long strips of fondant and then you're kind of ruffling out the edge and then you're rolling it. And this isn't like when you make a traditional rose where you have to make sure that all of those petals go a little bit higher and higher to give it that realistic look. It's more like a ruffly ribbon kind of look that I'm trying to achieve. Now this again is where steaming is really important. It's actually pretty difficult to attach this with just kind of water or even an edible glue. I find it way easier when you're doing big masses like this to use that steaming process. And then once you get your rose kind of where you want it, then you just kind of flare out the edges. And what I end up doing as I go along, there I only ruffled out one side, but I end up ruffling out both the sides and then folding it in half so I get even more of a ruffled pattern. And this isn't about making perfect looking roses, it's supposed to look all ruffly like that. I made different sizing of all of those ruffled roses, and I also didn't really care if it was super circular or not. It really is supposed to look very ethereal. And also one thing is I did focus on making sure that the thickness was relatively the same so you don't get huge lumps and bumps everywhere on that cake, and it generally maintains the same shape. Now what I'm doing is I'm putting the support in, and this is a 6-inch on the bottom, only a 4-inch going on top. This is probably more than enough support. You just don't want anything shifting whatsoever. So I put those bubble tea straws down, I place my cake board in between, and then have a dowel in the center. This is especially important if you're going to be traveling with this. The dowel in the center is a little less important if you're literally just going to put that on your party table and never ever move it, but most of us, we have to transfer our cakes. Then what I'm doing here is this is not edible, but you could definitely do an edible pearl border if you wanted to. I'm just taking a little bit of an easier route, and then I'm going in and I'm going to actually place a bow right where those pieces don't actually meet. This is my way of saving as much material as I possibly can. And then I'm going to make a little plaque. I find I love this plaque. It's from Fly Seahorse. They sent it to me a little while ago, and I just keep using it over and over and over again. You guys might recognize it from my carnival cake. And of course, here it's taking on a completely different vibe and appearance. You guys might recognize this letter C that I'm going to be using from Sweet Stamp. I did a review on it. I haven't used this product a whole lot. If you want to know why, you can check out that video in the right-hand corner, but I did find it extremely useful for this particular thing. It gave me the perfect letter C, and it fit really nicely in that plaque. Now I'm going to try using this fondant that Satin Ice sent me. This is not a sponsored video, but they did give this to me a little while ago, and I absolutely love that things just come sparkly. Now the one thing that was a little bit different about this than the other fondants that I've used in this line is it felt really elasticy almost. So just be aware of that when you are working with this. Now I call this my quick and easy method of making a tiara. You guys know I don't like to wait for things to dry. I am a very busy lady, so I like to do things quickly and efficiently. So what I'm doing here is I'm just rolling things out. Notice that I roll it out and give it a little bit of a thickness. If you roll it out too thin, it's not going to stand up on its own. You're going to have to add a lot of Tylos to this, which you totally could if you wanted a thinner look. And then I'm placing all of these strands on and just kind of adding little details here and there. My original thought was I was actually going to add some different patterns on here using a mold, but I decided that I liked this cleaner look a little bit better. And of course, you could keep going with that. Now I will say if you wanted to make that higher and higher, you probably would need to add a little bit of drying time to that. Now what I'm doing is I'm giving my cake a really good steam before I add on all the finishing touches. Of course, gotta use my Roxy and Rich glitter pump. Love this thing. I also used a little bit of that glitter pump on the bottom tier as well, but I used it in a rose gold, I believe. Now what I'm doing is after everything is nice and steamed, I'm going in and painting with a little bit of silver, and this is my water activated paint palette. I'm not as big of a fan of the water activated paint palette for large areas of work, but for something like this where you just need a quick detail, being able to add a little dash of water and then get to painting is really good. Both my son and I are in love with this cake. Now let's get into the pricing of this cake. And from the title of the video, you already know how much I would charge. Now a lot of this pricing is due to the fact that that bottom tier takes quite a long time. I mean, essentially you're making a bunch of flowers on that bottom. The price is also attributed to the fact that it's a tiered cake, and as soon as we get into tiered cakes, that does drive up the cost. We also have a 3D element on top, and when I was selling cakes, 3D elements would also be a cost increase. Now let's get into the subscriber submission of the day. I absolutely love this cake, and I believe that this was fully iced in whipped cream, which is my favorite topping of all time. So be sure to drop them a like, drop them a comment, and follow them on Instagram. And if you guys want to be my next featured subscriber on this channel, then please follow me at SD Bake Shop on Instagram, where you can either tag me in a photo or send me a photo of something that you would like featured on this channel. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!